Hey, welcome back to Voices of XYZ. This is Chris. Today we're going to talk about what traveling and how that's been different over the generations. So let's get right into it. So, one question I have for you guys, I'm curious. Um, like in school, specifically elementary, how much did you guys learn about geography? Because it was like its own separate subject for a little while in elementary when I was growing up, like a site, not just like buried within social studies. And I'm curious, what was it like for you guys?
Yeah, I
Yeah,
guess I'll go first. So,
Yeah.
for me, I felt like um, it was kind of buried in social studies for us too for a bit. Honestly, the best way I learned my geography was actually through Chris. You might maybe remember these like really crappy like Mac OS games that like taught you geography. Uh, it was really bad, but I, I just loved video games. Like that's what got me into it. But the actually one of the memorable things I remember most is actually like how bad the books were for in elementary school for whatever reason. Like I think they were planning on replacing them like the class below me. But God, these things were just like ripped to hell in school and stuff. So they were in really bad condition. But frankly, we did not learn much about the world outside of the United States,
Hmm.
to be frank. So
So it focused mostly on domestic on the US.
correct. Yes.
Did you have a pretty good do you feel like you had a pretty good handle on like other states and like capitals and those kind of things or
Not really. And honestly, I don't know if that's me just not being interested in that, or if like they just didn't kind of teach that. But I'm still pretty bad about like state capitals and stuff. You know,
I think
you
most
didn't.
people are nowadays.
yeah, right.
You guys didn't have like the quiz sheets where it's like you have like 3 minutes, name every state on this like map. And you have to they're like
Oh
go.
yeah. Oh yeah. It was a huge part of our because this is before MapQuest or any of that stuff. I mean, yeah. So it was a huge deal. We had those time quizzes, like you said, and we had to do like a book of all the states and their capitals and everything. It was just like, and seemed like every year we had to regurgitate the same thing. And like, remember last year when we did the state capitals? Well, we're doing it again. It was beat into us. How about you, Almin?
Yeah, for me, it was in social studies, and I felt like it was a pretty good job. Going into Moines schools, they're like I would say they're like probably the most like diverse schools in Iowa. For that saying anything, so we did focus a lot on like Latin countries, and then I'm trying to think what else. For like Latin countries, a little bit of Europe. I think that's about it. I remember from like them teaching us certain stuff, but then it was a lot of American history, like just growing up, like Manifest Destiny, like the Pilgrims. I remember we celebrated until like third grade Mayflower Day, which I don't know if they changed it, or like we like celebrated Christopher Columbus, which at the time I didn't know as a kid. They made him seem like a great guy. I don't think they do that anymore, but
Yeah. I was going to say it was very much like that when I was
yeah,
Yeah,
in school
I was gonna
too.
say same. Yeah, Christopher Columbus was a American hero. You know.
It really
well, yeah,
was.
this
Yeah.
guy's the goat of traveling, guys. Everyone
Yeah,
be
right.
like him.
Yeah, right.
So
And then
yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I think nowadays people are like, "Oh wait, we're not always the good guy." People are kind of
Yeah.
realizing this like history with the internet, and like you can teach yourself like we weren't
Hmm.
always doing the best things.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. Yeah, so I asked that question about geography because it was like there was a huge focus on it when I was growing up, but also I was a huge map nerd. I'll just admit it right now. um, this is really sad, guys, and I hate to be saying this, but so of course, again, before internet, before computers, any of that, um, you had to entertain yourself somehow. And I used to have. So, do you guys know what an atlas is? Do you even does anybody even talk about those now? What an
Yeah,
like?
yeah, we had one in the elementary school library. They're
Okay,
like, is it like a collection of books too? Because like, it'd be huge.
so yeah, we so an atlas would come out like every year. Different companies would have them. Like the Rand McNally was one, and so like every year they would release a new one because things change. And it basically was just a collection of all the maps, and they'd have one that was like all the United States. So you'd have like each state would have its own map in this book, and some of them were like the whole world. It's like here's Germany, it would just be a map of every country and every state and every province in this atlas. It was the world atlas, and they would, like I said, they would update it every year. But I would just sit there. My family would get one every so often. We wouldn't buy one every year, but we'd get it every so often because we traveled quite a bit, and because that's how you got around. Right. And but I would just sit there and study it like a nerd. I would just dream about all these places to go, and I would just look at the maps and what routes you would take between the cities and stuff. Boy, this is really embarrassing, but yeah, that's the atlas was a huge thing. And so when you went on vacation, um that's what you would take that, but they'd also give you you could also buy, and I think the state would also hand them out for free. If I remember, like the DOT would give you the state maps. Yeah, I think, yeah, you could get those for free, like at rest stops and stuff like that. You could just pick them up.
Yeah.
Maybe they still have those at rest stops. I'm not sure.
Yeah,
But
I don't really stop at rest stops anymore, but yeah, I remember relying on those. Even I went to like Chicago even like 20 years ago, and that was still really popular, that type of stuff.
okay. But we actually had in 6th grade geography, we had to learn how, and we had tests on how to read the maps, because it's not just like, hey, there's a road here, and if you want to go from this town to this one, there's the road. But there's like little markers and different numbers in between cities and things like that. There's like the blue number means this, the black number means this, the red number means this. And you would, like, if you wanted to know how long or how far it was from Des Moines to Denver, then you had to count up all the little segments, all these little numbers, and figure out how long of a trip you were going to take. And so that was just part of what we learned in geography and in 6th grade. I just remember that's something nobody would be doing now, I'm sure.
Yeah, that's crazy because like I don't feel like I ever learned like that map, like how to read like a map, like that. Like how to actually use a map. That's definitely like a complaint I had of my upbringing. It was just like real life skills were like massively missing in my school. Even just like personal finance and like how to cook. Like I remember only in high school to be like finally get like an actual like I'll call it like life skills class, and it was a single class, and like we learned how to cook, and like I was in it, but like I got made fun of because it was like a girl class. It's
Yeah.
like what the hell?
And that was the same in mine. Yeah, you would have gotten definitely bullied if you would
Yeah.
have elected to take those. Yeah.
Wow, that the narrative changed for me. It was like everyone wanted to get in those classes because you get to eat. So it changed a
Yeah.
little bit.
Yeah,
Why
that's
didn't
fine.
we think of that? That's great.
Yeah.
I think the personal finance has gotten just slightly better. I agree. It was only in high school, which I feel like the concept of saving your dollars should be a thing in elementary school. I feel like every kid should know that. But one question I wanted to expand on with the maps and stuff is, think about the first time you guys remember traveling with your parents and your family, and like how'd you guys get to point A to point B? Was it just maps? Did you have a little like GPS at all? For me, I remember very, very early, I think we did have a map at one point. But also could just be imagining that. But the first trip I really do remember, we had one of those Garmin like satellite GPSs my dad got at Best Buy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
When we first started traveling in the 70s, there was no such thing. So it was usually, if it was like a week-long trip or whatever, we would, if we were going any distance at all, we would plan it out ahead of time, and we would write on a piece of paper, you're going to go take 80 to this exit, and you're basically, we were MapQuest. We would have written like the turn-by-turn directions down on a sheet of paper. That's how we had to do it. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. I remember like my parents using what I'll call like the Atlas to like go to Florida, and then we went to one time we drove all the way to Washington State too. Um, and those atlases really came in handy because you'd cross states, and like Chris, you were saying, the rest stops and everything would have like a map of the state, but like they wouldn't cross states at all. So those atlases really came in handy when you're doing a national trip across states and kind of do a little more planning beforehand. But I'll say I got two stories. So like the first one was actually when we traveled to Europe when I was 16, and no technology still. And this was 2005, 2006. No technology or anything, and it was really rough to go to another country. We landed in Paris, and contextually, like the French like hated us at the time because we were giving them a lot of political flack over not supporting us in Iraq. And so I mean we looked like total Americans too. And so just there was like a lot of people just not being helpful, and so like we couldn't really speak French or anything or like read the signs, and there was no phones to like do like a drive by translation or anything like that. So kind of just flew by the seat of our pants, like had to basically learn. And I'll remind everyone that I grew up in literally the middle of nowhere, and then all of a sudden it was like, hey, there's a subway system, and it like blew our minds. But I had to like basically learn the subway system on the fly, in a different language, and then so that it was really hard. I don't know how people traveled, frankly, like at all, but I definitely do not know how they went after the country without a phone to like do some of the translation, or like Googling like what the hell does this mean, or like taking a picture and being like, okay, ChatGPT, like translate this for me, that type of stuff. It's just the anxiety. Like I don't know how people did it. So yeah, that's kind of the first one. The second one was actually the first time like I finally traveled by myself, was that trip to Chicago I alluded to before, and this was 2009. And I was too poor to have like one of those Garmin things, and they still even had problems back then. But yeah, I had to like bust out a map. I had like I didn't know where I was going, and I had to stop at a gas station and like ask for directions, and then they handed me a map for free, and then that helped. And I studied the map for like 20 minutes and like planned my trip back. So that was how we did it back in the days. You just stop and like ask people for directions.
That's I was thinking about that the other day. I think I was watching a movie where they had to do that, and I'm like, nobody does that anymore because we
Yeah,
used to have to do that all the time. Even with the map and the atlas and all that stuff, you had to stop and ask because you didn't know where you were. It's like, well, okay, that's the map, but where am I?
yeah, right. Yeah, like local. I mean, there was no like local maps. It's like you'd get into like even like a pretty small sized city, and it's like, hey, I don't know where the hell I'm going. Like speaking of maps, it's like they had the maps of the like you said, like the geography, but like once you got into like specifics, there was no like here's a layout of the city, here's like all the
Right,
streets, like
right,
you're basically like on your own. Once you actually got to the city, you're
right.
on your own.
It's like, here's Des Moines, okay.
Yeah, right. Yeah, like I'm
Or
looking for
here's
this house on this street, and it's like you've arrived in Des Moines. Good luck.
Dude, I would be so distraught I without my phone. Hearing you guys' stories. Like for me, in Europe, we went with a trip. We went with a group of people through Intrepid, which is a good company. I recommend that to anyone. But I don't really think you need it in most countries in Europe because they're pretty like well developed and like they have a lot of good maps. And um, we landed in Budapest for our first day, and we had like a whole day to kill, and we didn't do any like planning this trip or this one because we didn't know when we were going to arrive there, but we arrived really early, so we had a lot of time to spend. So I just opened up my phone, went on TikTok, found like top 3 things to do there next to our little hostel. I plugged them into Apple Maps. It told me exactly what subway to take, when it was coming, what color to take. I didn't have to ask for help on understanding how to buy like a ticket um, for the subway. But then we got to a restaurant. The guy could understand us. Whipped out Google Translate, typed in what I wanted. He laughed and smiled, and we got our food, and it was good. So but otherwise I would be cooked trying to get a map, trying to figure out where to go, what subway to take, what time it was coming. It's a lot easier now.
Yeah, just the amount of like, I'll say like social requirement needed to travel back in the day. It's like you had to constantly ask for directions, even just ordering food, like you said, it's like can't read any of the goddamn menus, like can't do anything, and so it's like you constantly were basically trying to like query people and ask them like for help for things, and maybe there's a, I don't know, some sort of lesson in there, hey, society's maybe worse off for it or something. But yeah, there's definitely like, you had to very much rely on your community no matter where you went, whether you were a part of that community or not, in order to get around.
So what countries did you go to in Europe? Just France?
Uh, we kind of we rode on the Eurail, which covers, I don't know, like 8 or 9 countries there. So we went to like most of them. We didn't hit Italy or Spain, but yeah, kind of those core ones.
Wow.
In the Yeah, we were there like a month.
How old were you at the time?
16.
Oh, wow. That's great.
Yeah, actually, I've got a horror story. So actually, we landed in Paris, and again, we're a bunch of just like you know complete losers. Had no idea how to do any of this stuff. Just a bunch of hillbillies, essentially, in a big city. And um, my brother Jim was 17 at the time, and it was actually illegal for a non-resident to be without a parent under 18. But like what happened was we didn't know any of the train systems, and we ended up getting on this train that was like going to the train graveyard for the night. But like what happened was we were getting on of it, and there was 6 of us, and we were getting on, and then like this guy who didn't speak English was like trying to tell us to get off the train, that it was going to the graveyard for the night. And so like, by the time like we kind of got the message received, like my brother Jim stepped off the train, and then the doors shut, and like all the rest of us went to the train graveyard. And Jim did not. He stayed at the actual station and like watched us go,
Oh,
and like he's
no.
literally 17 by himself in Paris, France. Like we had just landed 3 hours ago off the plane, and like we already lost somebody,
Oh, no.
And we get to the train graveyard, and like there's this big red button, and one of us pushes it, and this guy comes on. Thank God he like speaks English, and basically like comes down, like unlocks the train, gets us on another train back. He actually calls ahead to like they had just had a like terrorist attack on the train in Paris in 2005 or 6. And so there was like, I mean, there was like security guards literally everywhere. So he like called ahead, had the security guards like with Jim and everything, like standing near him and everything. And so we got back there. It was just like, welcome to Europe, like completely a terrible experience.
Wow. That's crazy.
The same thing happened to me actually in Budapest. So I was traveling with my girlfriend and her parents, and I was on my phone and I was telling them, okay, we'll get off the next stop. But I think her dad had his phone out or something, and he thought we need to get off. We need to go the other way. I was like, no, this is the way. Like, trust me, it's fine. And so all 3 of them got off, and I was going the right way. And then so I just like the same thing funny happened. I was right at the door closed. I'm just like smiling, like waving at them as they all like look at me, and they just like see me fly through the train. But then they just met up at the next stop, so it's not as extreme as yours, but
Yeah.
still kind of funny. What was the like the attitude of like traveling out of state and out of country, Ben and Chris, like back then? So like even talking to like my parents, like, oh yeah, I want to go like see in like Chicago and stuff. People are like, oh, it's dangerous, or like, oh yeah, we're going to Mexico. Oh, that's super like dangerous. Like people still think it's like kind of like that. Like how was it back when you guys were younger?
Yeah, I want to say that, especially back in the 70s, the bigger cities in the US were especially dangerous then. I think it was more, the perception it was more dangerous then. And so, to be honest, when we traveled quite a bit, but it was never, it was, well, I'm sorry, it was rarely to the bigger cities. Usually we always went somewhere like the Grand Canyon, like one year we did a tour of all the canyons out west and stuff like that. Or, usually it was always somewhere like for nature or mountains or something like that. And rarely, we usually avoided the cities just because of that. The one exception being, or two exceptions, I guess, uh, Washington D.C. because they thought it was important that we learn like all the history and stuff. So we did Washington D.C. at the time, and also Disney World, Disneyland. We did those, but otherwise, yeah, we stayed the heck out of the cities because maybe some of that was because we were Podunk, Iowa, and just but also I want to say the crime was worse in the big cities in the 70s.
Yeah, I was gonna, I guess, concur. And I don't know if the crime was better or worse in the '90s, but the perception was. I mean, it was like Cedar Rapids, which at the time probably didn't even have 100,000 people in it. It's like, oh, you don't go downtown. That's the bad place. Like stay away from there. And it's like, really, like, really, there's not even 100,000 people in this whole area. But yeah, it was pretty much the same, like in state. Um, and yeah, kind of to Chris's thing too is it was mostly traveling out west or to Disney World or anything. But to echo Chris once again, that it was probably like a bit of the hillbilly type of thing in there too. It was just like we're uncultured swine. So yeah. How about you, Elmi?
For me, it's like what I said. Like it's mostly like older people. Like, oh yeah, Chicago's dangerous. Like big cities are dangerous.
Yeah.
But honestly, I feel like I don't really. It could be me just being like a white male, but I usually feel pretty fine. I'm not usually out in cities that I don't know past 1 a.m. or like other countries and stuff. Like in Europe, we were out pretty late. One night we were in Venice at this pub, and we got like piss drunk. It was like 2 steps away from our hotel, so we weren't really too worried about finding our way back. But people are just happy living their lives. Everyone's like fine. You see the occasional just like cops walking, just patrolling everything. I know that's Venice, but I don't know. I still pretty fine. Most places are safe unless it's like an active war zone or I do feel
Yeah.
actually more anxious now, like at big events. Like I do want to go to the Olympics and stuff, but like a worry of mine is like some sort of attack happening or like at a major sporting event, like some sort of attack happening. I feel like that's my only like worry traveling now.
Yeah. Honestly, the safest I've ever felt like in a big city was actually in Amsterdam. Like those people were just like it was like 9 p.m., and everyone is just like high as hell. And
Nice.
and like it was like the most everyone was just so friendly in that city when we were there. It was wild. It was so wild.
I'm going there this summer. I'm super excited.
Yeah.
How often would you guys say you guys traveled or like travel now? Because I want to know how much like how that's changed over the time.
Yeah, growing up, my family, we always planned one big summer vacation, but that was my parents and my grandparents. But I want to say as an adult, I haven't followed that tradition at all. It's been very sporadic. Usually, if I do travel somewhere, it's for a specific purpose. Like recently, I went to visit Christy's daughter out east, but just to actually like plan a vacation, go somewhere for a week to get away, don't I don't do that very much anymore. Maybe every few years.
Yeah, it's been really sporadic for me too because I have a 5-year-old and a 3.5-year-old, so it's been a while, but largely the places we do travel are just basically make homage to family. So um but it's kind of weird because COVID kind of disrupted a lot of stuff, and that made it just kind of weird. And that was right around the time we started having kids, so I would like to travel more. um maybe in a few years, like when the kids, are better at traveling too, and they're able to occupy themselves. But I don't know, mentally, I feel like that's tough. That's a tough thing to do once you got kids. But pre-kids, like we went to like Washington D.C. We actually went to Jamaica. We did quite a bit of traveling, probably like once a year, until we had kids. So yeah, it was great.
Yeah, I was gonna ask both of you guys this, since you guys both have kids. I was thinking about talking to my girlfriend about this. I was like, do you like want to bring kids to travel when they're like super young, because they won't remember any of it, and it's like kind of a lot, like going for like a far vacation for like a long time, or do you guys just want to like wait, like Ben, you said, like when they're like a little bit older and they like actually remember stuff and they can,
Yeah,
Yeah, I don't.
I took a trip to Disney World when I was 7, and literally the only memory I have of it is a seagull swooping down and like knocking my ice cream off my ice cream cone. That is it. That is the only memory I have of that entire trip. And then we went again when went to Disney World again when I was like 11, I think. And I've got, I don't know, maybe a dozen or so memories from that. So I think to me, it's less about like the memories. Cause I think there's maybe just getting to my parenting side. I think there's like a general like sentiment, there's a general like growth like the kids will have like just traveling. I'm not too worried about the memories, but it's mostly like the stress and that kind of stuff. I know that's a little selfish, but it's mostly like the
No.
stress kind of stuff that it's like, man, I just don't want my kids to like be screaming in line and Disney World because we have to wait 45 minutes in line. So
hey, at least you have that respect, if that could happen. There was
yeah, for sure.
On my trip coming back from Mexico, on the plane back, there was a child crying for her iPad specifically for like an hour in the line for customs. That was ridiculous.
I don't have any memories of vacations until I was about 8. But like you said, I mean, there are probably other growth you're getting, just being out and about and doing something different, and kids probably grow. But I guess I didn't want to deal with the stress most of the time. I did take kids on trips sometimes, but they don't really remember them at all. But for me nowadays, it's more just about it's a budget thing. I just haven't set aside the money for vacations like I probably should have. And Christy and I talked, we kind of like to change that and start, going and doing things more. So I think that'll change.
Nice. Speaking of budgets, oh, you can go ahead, Ben.
I was going to ask Chris, where would you go? I'm curious.
I think, well, there's a lot of places I'd like to go. I really, really want to go to Ireland or Scotland, and I want to go on like a castle tour. That's one thing I want to do. I wouldn't mind going to the Mediterranean. That sounds like maybe doing a Mediterranean cruise or something like that. I think that'd be great. I'd also like to take maybe an Alaskan cruise. I've been on cruises before down in the Bahamas, Mexico, and Virgin Islands, those kind of places. But I'd like to check Alaska out too. So those are some of the ideas. How about you?
Plus one on the Alaskan cruise. Yeah, plus one on the Alaskan cruise. I think we might do that in a couple of years, for sure.
Yeah, I think it'd be really cool, just from what I've heard. So,
yeah, for me, wanting to travel, really want to go to like Amsterdam, like Copenhagen. I want to go to every continent. I would like to go to every country before I die. I doubt that's gonna happen. But at every continent for sure.
That's excellent. So Ben, you said you went to Amsterdam and you had a really good experience.
Yeah.
It was
just eating. I think the whole city was nice. Actually, we actually had a really bad experience there. Like overall, I guess, but I don't know. Me personally, I thought it was a great time, but the problem is, we went to this like Italian place. This Euro trip just was amazing, by the way. Sarcastically, we went to this like Italian place, like 9:30 p.m. and this dude like sniffed us out as Americans like immediately, and he like kept bringing us food and acting like, he couldn't really understand us, and we were too polite to like say no. So he like basically racked us up like, a $230 or 230 euro, you know, bill or something. And then he actually stole the credit card too. Like he stole the numbers.
What?
Yeah. He stole the numbers and sold them. And like literally in the morning, like the credit card
Oh
got turned
my
off and like had been like
gosh.
maxed out like $20,000. Just like, man, these people are like piece of work. But I still maintain that like Amsterdam was a good time. Me personally, but my mom was obviously pissed. So, and we had like the euro was like really strong at the time, and my mom only had a $200 US dollar like limit on how much she could withdraw every day. And there were 6 of us, and so that translated to roughly like at the time like 120 euro. And that's like pretty hard to like travel on 120 euro a day
Mm.
with 6 people. So there was a few days in there until because another thing we had to do is like we had to literally call my stepdad in the United States, and like we could not figure out how the hell to use the phones there because you had to like dial internationally. Um, and so yeah, we had to call him and then have him like put more money like in the bank account, so then it would like raise the raise
Oh,
the amount we could
jeez.
withdraw. It was just oh god, it was such a um yeah, it's such like an amazing story to tell. It was kind of a hell living it at the end because like this happened like a week before we were about to leave. Um, and I would say like we more or less like limped our way along back to the United States. We were basically just like counting down the days to when we got back. There was actually one night we ended up like in this casino town. I don't even remember what the town was called. We ended up in this casino town and we had to sleep outside. We did so there was some sort of issue with like our hostel, and we actually had to sleep outside for the night, which sucked. And this
Wow.
was yeah, we're sleeping on like a restaurant's like outside, furniture. Like
Jeez.
two 16-year-olds, a 17-year-old, and like 2 adults. So it was a good
That's
time.
crazy.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's insane.
Yeah. And then I mean by the time we got back to the States, like we hadn't showered in like 4 days, 5 days. And yeah, it was pretty rough. I'm actually when we got to the airport back here in Iowa in Cedar Rapids or Des Moines. No, it was Cedar Rapids. We got there and I was just like we were waiting to get picked up, and I was just like in the gift shop or whatever, and like this lady like came by me and like then told her friend, she's like, oh my god, that kid smells so bad. So it just makes me
That's
laugh every
crazy.
time.
Oh my
So anyway,
Jeez.
that's my
Yes.
traveling experience.
So you talked
Yeah.
so your story about the credit card getting stolen.
Mhm.
Have you guys ever heard of traveler's checks? Probably not.
Look that up.
Okay. Because that, like, I remember at least, when I was younger, we didn't, credit cards, I know my parents probably had one, and I'm assuming my grandparents had one. Yeah, I think they did, because I think that's how they did, like, hotel reservations and things like that. But it really wasn't as prevalent as it is now. And credit cards, and and when they did use them, it was like the little, the swiper thing where it went, it
Yeah.
was, credit cards just weren't as big of a deal then. So most of the time when we traveled, we went to the bank and we got those traveler's checks, which, I forget what denominations they come in, but you just get like a little stack of them, like $20, $50. I don't know what they were. And I think the way they worked was there was two signature lines on them, and at the bank, when you bought them, you filled out one of the signatures on all the pieces of paper. You wrote your name, either carbon paper or you had to write it on each one. And so then when you went to use those at like a restaurant or somewhere that accepted them, then you had to sign the other signature line, and then they would compare to make sure that it was really you, and that's
That's
how we would
crazy.
pay for things.
That is
Wow.
crazy.
Because most places wouldn't take a check either, because if you were out of state or whatever, like they would only accept like a local check probably. But yeah, that's how we did. That was our quote unquote safe way of carrying money on trips.
Mhm.
Yeah, I would, for Ben, definitely try traveling again in Europe. I promise you probably won't have that problem, because if someone uses your credit card, you can open up the app and cancel it, or like, freeze it real
Yeah,
quick.
right.
Damn.
Well, yeah, it was so jarring because like we didn't even find out for a couple days because it took like a couple days, I think, to like hit the max. And so we were out of Amsterdam at that point, and then went to go. I think we actually went to go pay. It might have been that night that we had to sleep outside. Is that we went to go pay for like our reservation at a hostel or hotel or something, and it was like declined. So
Wow.
it was like, well, out on the street you go. See ya.
Yikes. I wonder how long that took your mom to get that sorted out.
It was a bit, and to just keep adding injury to this, like we had a reservation in advance for what's the the D-Day beach, was that
Oh,
Normandy?
Normandy?
Yeah, we were in like the town. It might have been even called Normandy.
Normandy?
Yeah, and we actually had a reservation that like we specifically like wanted to go to that spot. I think it was my old gym that really wanted to go there, and so like before we started the vacation, like we like made a reservation there, had it all paid for and everything. But um, we got to the hotel that we were supposed to be, and we were like really excited because at this point, we had basically been just like limping along, and we were like really excited to like actually stay at a hotel and get a shower and everything. And we got there, and they're like, "Nah, you don't have any reservations." And it turned out that like what we suspected was like there was like this massive party that had like come in like after the fact, like just like a couple days before us, but they were like massive, and like this hotel like I think like wanted to book them all, um and they like kicked us out, like they just like canceled our reservations,
Wow.
Mm.
and like let these people get in our spot. And so that night we actually like didn't sleep, but like they wouldn't let us go to sleep, um so we had to like sit in the lobby and like do stuff to like make ourselves because it was too cold outside. It was like it was September at this point, and like at night it was just too cold to like sit outside, and so we just had to like sit in the lobby and like keep ourselves awake.
Wow. It's crazy.
Dude,
I don't really feel
Oh
like
man,
traveling to Europe right now.
this whole episode is just like Ben's like traveling horror stories.
Yeah, we need to like animate this, the whole trip, start to finish.
Yeah.
Uh, Yeah, I had the opposite approach. Everything was booked for us. They were super friendly, super nice. Damn.
I think that's the way to go, is like basically I know they do like tours and stuff. Is that kind of like what you did? Like you basically just paid
Yeah,
like a rate and the whole experience is guided kind of?
yeah. We had a really awesome guide. She was awesome. She's from Budapest. Led us everywhere. And at the end of it, it was us and then a bunch of girls from Australia. They're all like in their 20s, and a couple were older. Um, and they were talking to her, and like, oh, they figured out she was single. So like the whole time, like halfway through the trip, the Australian girls and like it's like really kind of like joking around, like, oh, look at that guy, he's kind of cute, right? At the last day of the trip, we were at a restaurant in Italy, and we met up with another intrepid tour guide group. And this tour guide, he's like, he's Italian, but he's like your stereotypical like Hallmark sexy Italian man. And so everyone was like trying to get them together the whole night. Yeah, I would definitely be using them if I ever want to go visit like anywhere in like Asia or like Africa or like the Middle East, some places where I really don't feel comfortable like getting around by myself in like those like smaller countries and stuff. So the one question I did have for you guys was, how much of like your trips do you guys like plan out? Do you plan out every little thing, or just like you get there and you figure it out?
Growing up, my grandmother was like, she had everything. I joke that she had everything down to 15-minute intervals, but I know it wasn't that bad, but she would plan an entire itinerary. Like, here's where we're going to go in the morning on this day. Here's where we're going to go in like everything was planned out. And I think, while it was great to be prepared, but I think growing up, what I learned from that was I really didn't enjoy that because I felt like we are just running from here to there and here to there. And I didn't really get to like relax during vacation. And so I think I've kind of swung the opposite way as an adult. I tend to just like, I'm going to go there and I'm just going to hang out. And when I feel like doing something, then we'll go find something to do. But that's what I guess I've tended to do as an adult. But I'm probably swinging back the other way now because I don't know. When you go somewhere and you spend enough money, you want to make the most of it too. So, but
Yeah, I think that's probably, I haven't experienced that yet, Chris, but I can totally see myself getting there. Is like if I had a lot of money in it, like I would be a lot more picky about my experience. Like even the Jamaica trip wasn't like that expensive, like relatively. Maybe that's a place of privilege, but it just like wasn't. I went to Jamaica this was February, it was cold as hell here, and so I was like I literally went there to like go sit on the beach, like
Mhm.
that's sort of just like baked into like one of the
Yeah.
experiences, and so that was kind of easy to do. um but my wife, Quinn, love her to death, but like she is a very much like do something with the vacation, so she's kind of like the driver of that. And I'm more like you, Chris, historically, is just like, hey, I kind of want to just like relax, be like a kind of a potato, and then like when I get bored, then
Yep.
I'll like go find something to do. But
Yep.
obviously, like some of the coolest things like require some planning for sure. But I leave that to her.
Yeah, I think that's why I've kind of gravitated towards the cruising or the cruises and like the all inclusive places.
Mhm.
Because you can just sit there, hang out somewhere where it's nice weather, and just kind of walk around and do whatever you want to. And yeah, how about you, Elmine?
Yeah, so I just actually came back from an all-inclusive last week in Mexico, and we went with the same goal in mind. Like we were both like stressed out from the end of the year, like everything we had to go do and like running around everywhere. So we just want to go sit on the beach and everything. And it was fun. And there's a lot of families there, which I was like, oh man, I wish I had like my friends or my family. I feel like that's like a perfect thing for all-inclusive because you don't really have to worry too much about the kids because they have like, oh, this is like kids' day and they're all gonna go hang out over there and they're gonna be watched and you can go, go sit at the pool or whatever. But towards the end of the trip, we were getting a little bored of it, just me and my girlfriend. So we just went to the people at the excursion desk and we ended up booking a trip where we got to go snorkel. We saw dolphins and whales. We were at like remote fishing villages. It was pretty cool. That's
Hmm.
where we can have the photo somehow in the show notes or on the website, but that's a photo of all the donkey or mules walking around the city. That's how
when
it's
when
a
when you booked that, did you just like do it online, like that was it?
Oh yeah. So I was supposed to book it in August, that's on me. But so then I kind of waited till Black Friday. So that Tuesday after Black Friday was just like Travel Tuesday apparently. And I was able to get a super great deal just on the resort company's website. Everything was booked for hotels, flights, taxis, one click, and it was all ready to go.
Nice. Yeah, I was going to ask you, Chris. I have never used a travel agent or anything. I know this is a real profession that real people do. I've like never heard or used one before. Have you ever used a travel agent? Because all I've done is the Elmine experience too. I've only ever like booked online.
Yeah, like 20, 30 years ago plus, that was, they'd have all the inside information. And again, before Google and all that stuff, you didn't there wasn't a lot of information to be had, so they were the experts, and so you went to them, and they, for a little bit of a fee, they'd get you a good vacation. And so we would use them then. I also, before I came to my current job at Casey's, I worked for a company that did travel, so I kind of got a benefit there too, where I was surrounded by travel agents, and I would use them too because that was helpful. But yeah,
So they've just like give you a pamphlet and like walk through. I mean, how would they like know though? Unless like did they
Yeah,
like do they like
same
go
well,
to
thing.
those places?
yeah, they continually send them. They're going, at least the ones I've experienced. They go all these places. They know, they
I mean, is
as
it like
part
on
of
their dime or like they like work for a company that then sends them to the
usually,
places?
I usually work for a company. Then, and like the company I worked for before, they would send um, bigger companies on trips, and they would go along with the employees. like Wells Fargo, for example, was a client. And so Wells Fargo would plan a big trip for all their top earners or something. And then our travel agents would go along with them on the trip and make sure that they got there. And then, they coordinate activities and stuff like that. But, so they got a lot of experience on different places, going places.
I see.
But yeah, so then they would put a whole package together for you as the customer, and they would give you different options and stuff. And you say, well, you could go here, you could go there, this place, here's your prices. And they would just book the flights, book the hotel. You just give them the money and basically the package price, and they would handle all of it and give you your itinerary. So it was kind of handy. But of course now, I think maybe 15, 20 years ago, they really cut the commissions for those people. And so I think it's really, it's just, there's no money in it anymore. So I think it's pretty rare now I don't think travel agents can survive, the last I heard. So
one thing
Was
with
it
travel
like-
agents.
Oh, go ahead.
I actually have seen them sort of pop up, but not in like the way that it used to be, where they like kind of plan out everything for you. It's sort of like they find the deals for you, and then you give them like a small. They have like their referral links with whatever, like Expedia or whatever, and they'll like kind of like help you plan out your trip like remotely, and then they'll get some like kickback from you booking through Expedia and stuff.
Gotcha.
Like, this question is maybe going to sound bad, but like, was it like a pretty like reputable thing? I mean, I just feel like it's like you literally like go on this trip, you like give this person all this money, and like you go on this trip, and like, I don't know, it just feels like there's an opportunity for them to just be like, I didn't book it, like thanks for the money, like I don't know, like did that happen, or was it?
Oh, I guess I haven't heard any stories about that. The ones we used were usually, kind of well known.
I see.
But like, again, I don't really see those anymore, but like the company I used to work for, ITA, was International Travel Associates. And that's what they were a well-known company back then when travel agents were more of a thing. So they would just, like maybe in the mall, there would just be one of the stores in the mall would be a travel agency. So I'm sure there were some that weren't reputable, but we used the ones that people knew about.
Yeah.
I can just imagine someone like, oh yeah, this trip's awesome, here you go, and then you just arrive to the place and you hold up the pamphlet, you put it back down, it's nothing like the pamphlet.
You're like, that's not a real ticket.
Yeah, I'm imagining like, I don't know, have you guys heard of like the Fire Festival?
Yes. Oh my god.
I'm just imagining something like that. Like you literally just arrive and it's like this fraudulent luxury, shit. Like
here's your styrofoam plate with your
with your can of beans,
your can of beans and your turkey sandwich. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I'm sure there were horror stories somewhere, but I wasn't aware of them. So.
Well, I told you guys all my horror stories. Like, do you guys have any like horror stories of traveling?
I have so many.
Oh no.
I love my mom to death, but she loves to argue with people at the resorts and like hotels about like, oh, the room's dirty and this, trying to get an upgrade. Oh my god, I remember so many times as a kid just like standing there, just like her yelling at the person. I'm just like so embarrassed. I just like want to run away the whole time.
So explain like what she was just trying to like get a free upgrade. Is that?
Yeah, but she'd always find something wrong with the room. Like, oh, this like the hair dryer is broken, or like sometimes it actually would be valid. Like, oh, this is actually kind of dirty, and like you guys did not clean this at all. Stuff like that. But it's just like, oh my god, the manner in which she did it was just so embarrassing. Which made me a great traveler because I'm very nice to everyone I talk to. And
was she the original Karen?
Oh, geez, haircut and everything. She's in the Karen Hall of Fame somewhere.
Can I see your manager?
Exactly. But other than that, like, I think I've been pretty good. I don't think I've ever felt like endangered or like something crazy happened. Never got like robbed or scammed or any of that. And I think maybe the worst thing that's ever happened to me personally is just like a horrible sunburnt where I was like jumping up and down on the bed because I just felt good because I was like cooling down my body because I just completely red like a lobster.
Yikes. Wow.
What about you, Chris? Nothing?
I don't, re- I'm racking my brain. I don't really have any super, um, no, I don't think I really have any terrible horror stories. I mean, there are some that have been, like one time we forgot the plane tickets at home and we missed the flight and that kind of, but those, nothing like major, like what you guys are going through. My grandparents did a lot more traveling internationally. And I think that's where, because I'll be honest, I've never been outside North America. I've been to Mexico, Canada, Caribbean, but never, I haven't really gone too far out of that bubble. So maybe that's why I haven't done any
Yeah.
super serious traveling. But um, one story my grandparents always like to tell, they had a lot of trouble in Ethiopia when they were there. Um, there was a dead person in the street one day when they were like on the way back
Whoa.
to their hotel. Everybody was just walking around this person. Um, but the one that got me, that scared me away from planes for a while, was they took off from um on Ethiopian Airlines. They were leaving Ethiopia and they saw all the fluid, like the jet fuel, just like fly over one of the wings, like it just sprayed out all over one of the wings, and the pilot comes over and is like, ladies and gentlemen, we have to turn around. Somebody forgot to close the gas gap, I guess. I don't know what happened.
Wow.
But no, they had a lot of stories like that. But no, I must have lucked out. I probably just jinxed myself for my next trip. But have you guys had anything like that with planes? Like anything scary like that? Or
My only one that I remember is we were flying to Washington State, and we got to I think it was the Spokane airport. Like we got in there and landed. That was all fine, but like it was like backed up to get into a terminal, and so like we were sitting there, and then like the plane literally like lost power for like 10 minutes somehow, which was really scary, because it was mostly scary because it was like, oh man, like, oh my god, what if we lost power, like 10 minutes sooner, and so that was basically like as close as I've gotten to, I don't know, possibly dying. I'm not sure, but some Final Destination stuff going on there, I don't know, but yeah, that's basically it as far as airplane horror for me.
Yeah, I just had some bad turbulence once. That scared me as a kid, but after I saw like the plane and Jello simulation of like what turbulence actually is, I'm not scared of it anymore. But yeah, nothing like jet fuel coming out. But after all the like the Boeing stuff has happened, like the Boeing like whistleblowers and the Boeing planes and stuff, I get a little nervous.
For sure. Yeah, it's like same. It's like, is the door gonna pop off? I don't know.
Yeah, I was like, I'd like to make it back home to my cats. That'd be really nice if I could just land and get where I need to go.
I was thinking of airports, like in general. I never experienced the I watch movies like Home Alone, right, which is kind of like the pinnacle 90s movie for me. And like they literally just go to the airport, and it's like they're like in the beginning of the movie, if you're not, I'm sure you guys are familiar, but for anyone listening, like they're like they wake up and they only have like 40 minutes to get to the airport, and like they still make their flight. And like today you think about that, it's like that is literally impossible. But like
right
in the 90s, there's like no security or
Oh,
anything.
yeah.
Like nothing like that, right? It's just like you just literally get out of your fucking car and like run to the terminal and then like give them your ticket and get in. And even then they're like, like, in the movie, they drop the ticket. It's like, just get them on the flight, right? Like that literally would never happen ever, ever in a million years today. And so I just think about like how even just like traveling like that is so much different. So much different. And like we traveled to Europe, in 2006, and even this is post 9/11, and it was like the security around that time was just absolutely insane. And then, like I mentioned earlier, is like we flew into Paris, and they had literally just had a terrorist attack a week ago. So it was just like, the security complexity was just incredible.
Yeah, I need to ask both of you guys, like pre 9/11, I grew up in a post 9/11 world. what was that like? Because it seemed like it was like it was like like a train, right? You get the conductor your ticket, you get on, and you go. Like, what was that like? Do you have any memories of it?
It was similar to that. It was definitely a lot easier, but I remember they still had metal detectors, and you still had to go through that thing, and then people would just go through. Oh no, forgot to take out my keys. Whoop, no, forgot to take out my change. Whoops, no, and they just keep going through and getting buzzed every time. But yeah, besides the metal detector, it was pretty much just like, oh yeah, there it was really really easy to get on the plane. So
Yeah, like what kind of psychopath would bomb a plane or take it over, right?
exactly. Yeah.
How was I guess it's related to traveling, like the like oh, I guess we could say this for a different episode. I don't know if we talked about it. Have we talked about like 9/11 in this podcast yet?
We haven't yet. Maybe that's that's probably a good episode.
Yeah, that should be a whole episode.
Okay,
Like
we'll leave it.
I got a lot of stuff I can say there.
I do have one question for you, Amin, unless you were gonna
No, go ahead.
continue on that. So you just came back from Mexico, right? So so I'm curious, like how like something I've noticed over the last 30, 40 years is when you go to these places like Mexico and Bahamas, wherever in the Caribbean, that they have become more and more Americanized. It's like, did you notice that when you were there? It's like, are they really like catering? Like, are they playing American music and, and dressing and wearing clothes that say like stuff from United States television shows and stuff like that? I mean, what did you notice any of that?
Yeah, they were playing the Mexican band at the resort. There was always a band every night, and they were playing the song where it's like everybody wants to rule the world. They're playing all these American songs, and
Oh
they
my
mix in some
gosh.
Spanish songs. But like the merch that people try to sell you on the beach, one was super funny. Because after working at John Deere, it was called Juan Deere, and it was like a photo of a deer. It was sort of a donkey, not a deer. And it was like Juan Deere. I don't know. It was a bunch of shirts like that, like American companies, but like Mexican versions of them. And
Really
yeah,
funny.
yeah, everything's geared towards Americans. Like you notice, especially in Europe, a lot of people don't drink too much water or like put like ice in all their drinks and stuff like we do over
Right.
here. So
Mhm.
when a place is touristy, when they like sort of like have that, you can sort of see like other advertising. They have like ice, stuff like that. But in Mexico, it was a lot of people spoke English. They try to cater towards like American music at the some bars and stuff, like hits and songs. But I don't
Mhm.
know how much of that is like catering towards us versus like how much of they just like consume our media and stuff. Because I feel like that's also a big thing. Because a lot of my
Yeah.
cousins in Bosnia, they love like American TV shows and like American music.
Yeah, you probably got a good point there. But I just remember thinking like on my first time in the Bahamas, it was like in 92, 93, and I remember, like you hear I don't know, the local music being played, and it's not a song that you recognize, but it sounds cool. It's something very from it's local. But then the next time I went to the Caribbean was like in Virgin Islands or something. They were playing like all these like songs with steel drums in them and stuff like that, but they were American like top 40 songs. But they were just playing them on their instruments, and that's all they were playing over the radio and everything. And I'm just like, wow. And I don't know. In a way, it kind of makes me sad because it's like, do they think they have to do that just to cater? Like, are Americans expecting that? Or like you said, maybe it's just our culture has influenced theirs so much. I
I
don't know.
Man, I have like so when I went to Jamaica, like the pandering like was like that. And yeah, thinking back on it, like I don't know if it's like a survival technique because like I mean Jamaica is like a really really destitute place for the most part. Besides like the resorts, like it's really kind of sad. And
Hmm.
I think there's some maybe some white guilt that I harbor over like even going there because it was pretty sad. But like for example, like we were on this we landed in Jamaica and we got on like a charter bus to go to like the resort, but the resort was on there's a single airport to Jamaica but like our resort was on the other side of the island, so like you had to drive like 2 hours. And if you're unfamiliar, there's like one movie that Hollywood has made about Jamaica. It's called Cool Runnings. It's about a Jamaican bobsled team, which is sort of the novelty of it. And that movie played on the charter bus the entire way there. And it got over on the charter bus and then started playing again on the charter bus.
Oh, jeez.
And then on the way back, when we were coming back, Cool Runnings was on the charter bus again, like played again. But like when we were doing stuff, like, I mean, I saw that movie probably 4 times when I was there. They had that thing playing everywhere. But speaking of merch, I mean, like, the stuff they had there was like, frankly, it was just like marijuana and like everywhere. At the edge of the resort, at the beach, they had it. They actually had it fenced off, but it was just like a metal fence, and so like you could kind of like get your arms through, and people would just like literally sit at the fence and like sell you weed like at the fence through into the resort.
Wow.
And actually, we were going to one of like the things we were going to do was like some really beautiful falls, and our bus driver just in the like we're literally on the way there, and he just stops the bus and is like, "Hey, I got to grab like a bottle of water," and like he just gets out, goes, I don't know, 20 feet to this dude just sitting on the side of the road with his car, and he gets out, and like we literally see him buying like like a whole blunt like right there. He gets back in the bus, and he's just like, yeah, like acts like that was a bottle of water that he just bought. It was like just hilarious, like the nonchalance there of doing that. So
Yeah, that happened to me in Mexico. We got off the boat to get at the fishing village, so they got the boat pretty close to the beach. We just hopped off the boat and like walked like ankle water up. And the tour guy was like, "Yeah, these guys are gonna try to sell you weed. I wouldn't recommend it, but like you're free to." And like they come up like, "You guys want any happy cigarettes?" And they like open up a little fanny pack and it's a bunch of like pre-rolled like joints. So I was pretty surprised about that too.
yeah.
Happy cigarettes.
Yeah.
And the guy was like, "This will solve any broken hearts if you have any." It's like, okay. He's a pretty good marketer, man. Yeah, some of these guys they have good jokes. They have good jokes. I'll give them that. Oh, one thing about I guess this could be the last question for up to an hour. Any advice you guys would give from your generation's viewpoint on traveling? My advice would be check the local Reddits. Those are very useful, I find, like local subreddits of the cities. You can always find like actual people that live there or like expats that like kind of share like some hidden gems. That's how I found some cool places in Europe.
Yeah, I don't think I don't know if I have any travel tips. Again, I'm like a relaxed guy, so me like just relax. That's my advice. Just relax. But like again, my wife would be like, get the most out of it, right? So I don't know. It's differing priorities.
Yeah, I'm going to repeat what Ben said. Sorry, I don't have any great advice.
I'm not obviously I'm not good traveling because I did not think about the Reddit thing either. That's such good advice. Damn, dude.
It's a really good point. Yeah.
One tip for people that live in Iowa: the Des Moines airport is not that busy. So if you're my parents listening, we do not need to get there 4 hours early.
How long does it take to get through Des Moines Airport?
On Thanksgiving Day, 20 minutes. It took me.
Oh, wow.
Thanksgiving Day. No, sorry. The day before Thanksgiving. 20 minutes.
Wow. Yeah.
But obviously, don't do that in Chicago. Chicago is 5 a.m. We went in security for like an hour. So, 2 hours domestic, 3 hours international. Follow that rule. I think it's a good rule of thumb.
Oh my gosh. O'Hare is a nightmare. Sorry.
When you went this time, Elmine, did you do like the Gold Star thing that Iowa has? Like, what is that a federal thing or just an Iowa thing?
I've always done that since I've had a driver's license. It's been a thing. Whenever I'm traveling like domestically, I always use that. So whenever I go to go to like Charlotte or like New York, I just show my ID. I don't even remember my passport. I find it really nice. But it also apparently, if you have it on your phone, that would also work, but not in every state.
I didn't
Interesting.
know about that.
Yeah, I haven't flown since like they've done that, so I was always kind of curious how that works. Because last time I got on the plane was like 2018.
Yeah, another thing is a TSA pre-check. I don't think it's as good as it used to be because so many people have it now. 'Cause I was at an airport once where the TSA pre-check line was longer than the normal line, and I have pre-check, so I just went through the normal line. I was like, I'm not going to wait through TSA pre-check. Like, I can take my shoes off. It's not that serious. But the global entry, I think that one's going to be pretty good if you do a lot of international traveling, because those customs lines can get really long, and the global entry is just like you scan your passport at the kiosk and you just walk straight through.
Obviously, anyone listening, please go to Elmine for
Yeah,
traveling
yeah,
advice.
I am a travel agent now, apparently. So
do you have
Yeah,
your
right.
own subreddit now about travel?
oh no, I'm old school. Okay, I have pamphlets. Come visit my office. It's in a strip mall between Subways and a Navy recruiter office right there.
Right, we'll start another podcast where Elmine just, gives you travel advice, and we'll bring on guests who are looking for travel advice.
That's the future. Well,